Welcome to Candidates of Liberty, a special series from Lions of Liberty dedicated to spotlighting libertarian candidates across the country. If you enjoy our work, please consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/Lions of Liberty.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Candidates of Liberty. This is our newest show here on Lions of Liberty. We run it every Tuesday. This is the show where we interview libertarians who are running for public office. This is the 8th episode of Candidates of Liberty. That means the show notes page can be found at lionsofliberty.com/COL8. Of course, this is only one of our shows. We have 3 other shows. We have a show every Monday, our longest running show, our flagship program, hosted by Mark Claire, where he interviews leaders in the Liberty movement. Every Wednesday, we have Electric Liberty Land, hosted by Brian McWilliams, which is your weekly shot of culture, comedy, and liberty. And every Friday, Felony Friday, where I take a look at the oh-so-broken criminal justice system. Be sure to subscribe to get all 3 shows delivered right to your phone every single Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. You don't want to miss any of these great episodes. This is the only libertarian variety show out there. Today's interview is with Tim Silfies. He was actually just on Kennedy last night, so great timing for you guys to get to know Tim, an outstanding candidate here, a local candidate in Pennsylvania, where I am. Excited for you guys to get to know about his campaign and everything that he's accomplishing running for Congress. Let's get rolling with the interview. My guest today on Candidates of Liberty is Tim Silfies. Tim is running for Congress in Pennsylvania's 7th District. Tim has an impressive background in television. He started out working as a producer for Greta Van Susteren before beginning a stint as journalist and libertarian John Stossel's producer. While working with Stossel, Tim honed his craft and he observed firsthand how common sense limited government, when it protects economic and personal liberty, sets the stage for individuals to prosper. Tim also, while at Fox Business, co-created and ran 2 news shows, The Independents and Kennedy. After leaving Kennedy, Tim made the move back home as a reporter for WFMZ. Now he's left WFMZ and he's running for Congress. He's shaking things up in the congressional race in PA District 7. Tim, welcome to Candidates of Liberty.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me.
Well, thank you for taking some time out of your busy campaigning schedule to come on the show. I know you, I follow you on social media. I've been watching your campaign from across the other side of Pennsylvania, and I've been very impressed with the campaign that you've been able to run. You're obviously very active on social media. I know we talked offline. You're going to be able to participate in a number of debates and forums. So a lot of exciting stuff going on. I want to talk about all that good stuff and talk about your opponents and all that. But before we do that, I want to get to something that I think everyone's going to be interested in right away is your connection with John Stossel. Tell us a little bit about how that came to fruition. Sure.
So about 15 years ago, I started at Fox. I started in kind of the bowels of the building. I was there I started as a freelance script PA, printing out scripts for the anchors at like 2 a.m, just running around, hustling. And then it kind of grew, like you said. My first major stop was working with Greta as a field producer part of the time, and then a writer and different things for her. And then I ended up, by that time I was, well, actually, I'll back up a little bit. I used to go to some of the debates, the presidential debates, working as a candidate handler. The way this works is the networks, they have someone that they like assign to each campaign at these, at the debates. So I actually, one of the debates in 2007, I guess, I was assigned to Ron Paul, which was pretty cool. It was interesting to see the sort of the way he was so different from everybody else. I mean, the other candidates would roll in with like these huge entourages, and because this was this was when McCain ultimately won, but Romney was also a serious establishment candidate, and Paul was just there, kind of mixing it up. So I was a handler for him, and I also was there.
If I can jump in, ask you a question just about that time right there in your life. So at that time, like, what were your politics then? Were you leaning towards libertarian, or where did you fall?
Yeah, I was pretty libertarian by that point. And that certainly, being around him was one of the things that kept me moving that direction, especially because I was there that night, the infamous Giuliani moment. I remember standing there watching that backstage and sort of seeing the reaction and like the hissing and booing from the crowd. He was not popular, but to me, I was like, wow, this is kind of different. So fast forward to, again, I was pretty libertarian by that point. So when a job opened up on Stossel, I jumped on it and ended up with him for a few years. And it was a pretty amazing experience. I mean, I worked on the weekly show on Fox Business, but then I also went kind of and worked on his documentaries. If in his Fox News days, he used to have 4 documentaries about a year that aired on the big Fox network.
Okay.
So those were great. I mean, I did all kinds of different things for those. I mean, we worked on an education documentary where I got to go to New Orleans and see how the charter schools were working down there. And then I went to Portugal at one point for about a week, just kind of document their drug decriminalization.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was just a lot of, being in the Stossel world and learning from him. I mean, John, he is a master of his craft. And I was very fortunate to learn just how to put news pieces together. And what I learned from John too, that to this day, I think I find really useful, is just sort of communicating libertarian ideas in a very clear way and a digestible way that people can understand. That's what I think John's really, really good at.
Wait, why do you think he's so good at that? Like, what's because at least my observation of libertarians, watching libertarians interact online, interact with people who are libertarian or maybe Republicans and Democrats, is I think we come off as maybe a condescending way, a know-it-all way, a shove it down your throat. This is the way it's got to be. So, like, what are a couple things that you learned from Stossel that maybe help you bridge that gap between, a libertarian ideology and maybe a progressive or a conservative ideology? Yeah,
I think you bring up a really good point. I think I too have noticed the kind of communication issues that we have sometimes, we being libertarians. And he, I think it's just mostly because he came out of the local news world. And I think it happened pretty organically for him just over years. And I mean, he's been in the game for 40 some years, I think. And he just got really good at, John is a master. I used to love, it drove me crazy. It was frustrating working with him, but it was also, he was so good at it. Just watching him, we would have a piece and he would just cut it down and cut it down and cut it down and simplify the language and simplify and make it just so digestible that anybody could understand it. And I think that's why he communicates really well. I mean, a lot of people like Stossel who aren't libertarians and who they think, okay, I get him. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think that's it. Basically, he's just learned the economy of language over the years. And I'm really thankful for it. And, just diving in a little bit more about what happened after that was working on Stossel is where I first met Kennedy, because she came on as the special correspondent of the show. And I ended up being with her a lot of the time. Like, we would just go all around the country doing different weekly segments for Stossel. So that's how I got in with her, which led then to when the Independents came around, that spinoff basically of Stossel. It was with Kennedy and then Matt Welch from Reason and Camille Foster, who's with Freethink, who now Camille and Matt are part of the Fifth Column, which is another fantastic libertarian podcast, which is sort of, I think of that as actually like an extension in some ways of the Independents. The Independents on Fox Business was wild. I mean, it was a really pretty hardcore libertarian show in the middle of just. It was when Fox Business wasn't as successful as it is now, so it was wild times, and it was a great show. I mean, I loved it, and it planted the seeds for where we are now, which is Kennedy, which is also, I'm really proud of that, and it's so awesome to see it on still. I mean, it's one of the few voices of sanity in cable news at this point. At least I think.
Absolutely. I'm curious. So as you're saying, with Fox Business, and I guess it is more libertarian now with Kennedy, and Judge Knapp had his show Freedom Watch for a while. I forget if that was on Fox Business or Fox, but it
was on Fox Business.
That was just unapologetically libertarian, shoving your face, which was great.
Yeah.
But was there ever any sort of pushback from the bigwigs at Fox saying, "Hey guys, tone this down a little bit," or anything like that?
It's an interesting question. I think not explicitly. I think that at times it became, the Independents particularly was very, it just went after everybody, like from all sides. It was kind of like Napolitano's show in that regard. And nobody ever like sat us down and said, do not do that. Like, it wasn't like that. But, on the other hand, the Independents also isn't on the air anymore. So I don't know, maybe that had something to do with it. I think ultimately I'm not really sure why it ultimately got canceled. At the time, honestly, FBN was kind of veering all over the place. It wasn't like it is now. FBN now beats CNBC, so it's very much a juggernaut. And Kennedy, it's great to have her there because she really is. Trust me, I know her very well, and she's as libertarian as it gets. And the judge too, by the way, is awesome too. I didn't work with him as much directly, but it was amazing to have him kind of down the hall that I could go talk to him and ask his advice. And he inspired me a lot too, and helped me get where I am.
Yeah, well, that's amazing that you have those influences in your life. Not many people can, say that they personally know John Stossel, Kennedy, and Judge Napolitano. So that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it's cool.
So let's dive into your campaign here a little bit. First question: Why did you decide to run? Why did you decide to leave? You're having great success in television. Why did you decide to do this?
That's a great question. So I was after being at Fox. I relocated back to where I live, which is in the Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, Bethlehem specifically. And I was a business reporter then for a while. I moved from behind the camera to kind of on it. And that was rewarding in its own right. It was a totally different deal, to move from the national news to like local news was really interesting. And it made me see even more, like, when it's people who are in your backyard and people you interact with all the time, you see how politics and the government can affect people and adversely, frankly, a lot of the time, as we know. And, I just sort of I've always, you can imagine as a libertarian, I'm sure you feel this too, that it's just sort of like things just get worse and worse sometimes. And I just kept, like, over the years, it was just like, man, these two parties are just not representing anything of what I believe. And I really just grew more and more. I felt this crescendo that a moment could be coming where an outside voice could have a real chance. And that was accelerated at watching the 2016 race. Where obviously, that was kind of a race to the bottom in a lot of ways, where people felt like it was, the presidential election specifically, of just being a total horrible choice between the lesser of two evils. And then there were some conditions on the ground here that made it seem like this really could be the time. Because this is an open seat. So I'm not running against an incumbent, which is a big deal. The combination of that and the redistricting, I felt like put things kind of not in chaos, but it threw enough of a wrench into things that could also be an advantage. So I felt like, the time was now with all the things happening. With Trump as president, we saw Brexit happen. We saw Ocasio-Cortez now in New York. There's just, I feel like there are fissures happening all over the place, and there's really weird winds blowing, and this could be the time to hit a real jet stream.
I agree with you. And, like I said at the top, I've watched your campaign from afar. And one of the first things I saw was a campaign video you released, which was probably one of the best I've seen put together by a libertarian, which goes to your TV background.
Well, thank you.
To be able to put that out there, I mean, that just ups your credibility immediately. People see that. And with being in the local market, people seeing your face on TV, I'm sure that helps with your name recognition, obviously, which is fantastic. So let's kind of shift and talk about your opponents a little bit, talk about your chances in this race. You're not running against an incumbent. Is that because of redistricting, or did the incumbent retire, or what happened there?
He retired. Yeah. Charlie Dent was his name. And he just left, partway through his term. So the seat's open now. It's complicated, but basically the old seat is open, and there's going to be a special election on the same day for that seat, and then a seat for the general. Does that make sense?
It's a little confusing, but okay.
It doesn't matter. It's just political nonsense.
Yeah. So who are your two opponents? I assume you have a Republican and a Democrat, right? Yeah.
The Republican's a guy named Marty Nothstein, who his claim to fame was that he was in the Olympics in the 90s. And then there's a woman named Susan Wild is the Democrat, who she's an attorney. I think she was a city solicitor, maybe. So I don't know them that well. I mean, I interact with them from time to time at events, and we had a radio forum a couple weeks ago, and they're just sort of, they're fine. I mean, they're nice enough people to me, but I think that it's not really about them, you know? I mean, I think it's about the establishment parties, and I look at it as just sort of they're almost incidental in the race.
So you talked a little bit about this chaos that's happening across the country, where you have really in the Democrat Party, the progressive wing, the socialist wing, if you want to call it that, rising up. So what kind of chances do you give yourself as an outsider? I mean, you're a third party. You're not coming from within one of these from the duopoly, but so it's a little different than the, Ocasio-Cortez situation. But what kind of chance do you give yourself? Has there been any polling, anything like that? What kind of feel do you get for the race right now?
I think I'm not an idiot. I mean, I understand that, like, I'm an underdog. I'm going to be an underdog no matter what. I mean, this is a long shot uphill fight. Now, that said, I feel very good about where we are. I mean, first of all, I've been at this for months now, and I've done a lot of grassroots, knocking on doors. I've knocked on thousands of doors at this point, all around the district. And I get a real sense from talking to people across the ideological spectrum, Democrats, Republicans, independents, libertarians. I mean, I'm knocking on everybody's doors. I'm talking to people. And there's this common theme of disgust and exhaustion with not only the news, but with the establishment parties. I mean, people are really palpably not happy with this situation, which I think it helps, and it makes them receptive to our message, because, people are open to new things right now. Now, that said, I don't know how that's going to translate into votes, but what I do know is that I've gotten a lot of good media coverage. That's an important thing, that the media here, the local paper and the local news station, they're ostensibly covering this at this point as a three-way race, which, as we know, with being in this movement, that's hard.
That's a huge win. I mean, to have that alone is a huge win.
Yeah, and I'm in. I mean, at this point, we're not exactly sure how many, but there's going to be 5 to 6 forums and debates, and at this point, I'm in all of them. So that's a big deal too. So I feel like as much as possible, this is going as well as I could hope at this point. Let's put it that way. And it's going to be a hard fight, and I'm going to need, I'm doing pretty good in fundraising, but we're going to need more money, and we're going to need, these are real realities of challenges. You know what I mean? I mean, because my opponents are both establishment corporate candidates who are they're going to outraise us. But these challenges, I think, if there's a moment where these things can be overcome, I think it's now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, as libertarians, we're always, well, not always, but at least right now, we're definitely going to get outraised. Fundraising is, I mean, that's our biggest toll, but we can still outwork people. I mean, which I think that's our biggest advantage.
Yeah. And the beauty of a congressional race is that I'm not covering a distance that's like, that you can't even wrap your head around. You know what I mean? I mean, it's big, but it's a manageable distance. I mean, I've knocked on doors in pretty much at this point every corner of the district. Now that doesn't look, I'm not going to be able to knock on every door, obviously, but it's, when you can drive the perimeter of your district in a relatively manageable amount of time, it makes you realize that this stuff is possible. And I really do. I wouldn't be, I think I can win. I do. I mean, I don't, it's going to take, I'm an underdog, but I think I can.
All right. Well, that's great. Let's dig into your policies a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I want to hear about, just pick your three really main issues, the three things that when you're giving a speech that you make sure that you hit on. Okay.
Well, look, rejecting the two-party system itself, I think, is actually a very powerful message for us because it's visceral. I mean, and people, at this moment in time, people really don't like those two parties. So that in itself is a powerful starting point politically to say sort of like, look, even if you don't agree with me about everything policy-wise, even if you don't agree, we can find common ground of this starting point of rejecting that establishment and moving forward from there. And that, believe it or not, I mean, there are progressives who support me almost for that reason. And other common ground that we find on things like criminal justice reform and the drug war, and which are big ones that I hit, by the way, especially in Pennsylvania. And look, I try to, it's hard to get people to care about it passionately, but the truth is I talk all the time about our debt. I mean, $21 trillion in debt it's going to be the end of us if we don't get it under control. And I still talk about endless wars too. I mean, these are things, these are things that obviously as libertarians, I mean, we care about them so much, and they're things that they need to be discussed, so I do a lot.
Yeah, it's hard with the debt, and to a lesser extent with the foreign policy, with the war, but it's hard with the debt to get people to really wake up and take notice of it because they're not getting impacted. They're not feeling the impact right now in their everyday life from the war. I mean, everybody knows somebody, at least through, a friend or a family member, or, maybe not directly, that's been affected by somebody that's gone to war and they've come back and, God forbid they committed suicide. That's an incredible epidemic. We have veterans committing suicide, but, people come back wounded and things like that. So that's a huge issue. I 100% agree with hitting on that. Every libertarian should hit on that as much as possible.
Yeah.
I want to ask you one last question here, and this one it's not a trick question, but it's one that I think definitely deserves some careful thought. But I think it's very important. With libertarians, there's definitely a couple different areas where libertarians don't agree on, because libertarians love to argue about everything down to the minutia of it. But out of these issues, these couple issues in the libertarian ideology, which one of these viewpoints are you not really either fully on board with, or maybe have an issue with an aspect of it?
Yeah, this is an interesting one. I mean, I've heard you guys ask this before, and it had me thinking a lot about how I would answer it. I think for me, immigration is one where, I think a lot of people who we agree with and who I love and respect are kind of for totally open borders, which I don't think that's a realistic position at this point. I mean, I think that look, I want there to be more legal immigration. I want it to be easier, much easier to come here. I think we need We need more people here. We economically, and it's good for us culturally. But I also think that, it's a reasonable role for government to expect there to be borders. So I think that's one that I identified, that I feel different points of view. You know what I mean? Like I feel sympathetic to all different sides when I hear the arguments about it. And that's good. It's always intellectually good to feel challenged and, well, I'm not sure exactly how I feel about this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's one that it's sort of hard to wrap your arms around the whole idea, because for one, Democrats will come out and say we're for open borders, and they'll say that, but they don't really mean it, because Democrats, they still want to document everyone that comes in. They don't want an open border. Libertarians are probably the closest, the ones that are for the fully open borders, but at the same time, they're for property rights. So that's a border at some point if we did transition in that society. So I don't know if anyone's really for open borders, but
yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, there are some. Yeah, you know what? You're right. And this is exactly what I mean. Where it's just like I kind of go in a circle about it, and what I do know, importantly, at the end of the day, is that we're way better on this than either of the major parties, and that the two of them have completely smashed the immigration system. I mean, it doesn't even exist at this moment. It's just so. In that respect, we have a very viable solution, and at least the way I talk about immigration on the stump is something that appeals to both sides. Just so, and I mean like regular people. I don't mean the establishments. Just the idea that, look, we need more immigration. We need to make it easier, and it's reasonable to have borders, and also I think that this is where it gets a little dicey, but to treat people who are already here with dignity and respect, and if they're peaceful, to let them stay. And that, that I think that's a reasonable position to have, that a lot of people from a common sense perspective can connect with.
Good stuff. So just want to ask you before I let you go, Tim, let everyone listening know where they can, find out more about your campaign, your website, how they can donate, how they can volunteer, how they can help you in any way.
Yeah, I would love it. TimSilfies.com is where to go. It's like selfies with an I. It's a weird name to spell, but TimSilfies.com has all of that. And I would love and be humbled by any donations, any support, because things are going really well here, and I really feel like this is a good one for us to focus some attention on, because I'm planning on making a lot of noise in the next few weeks.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, Tim.
Thank you.
Hope you guys enjoyed today's interview with Tim Silfies, another great libertarian candidate on Candidates of Liberty. I've been so happy with the way that this show has come together, with Mark and Brian and myself doing these interviews with just outstanding libertarian candidates. As I've said before, the reason we decided to do this show is Mark Claire and I went to the Libertarian National Convention, and we met so many good candidates there. There was just no way that we could find ways to fit them on, the different shows that we have here at Lions of Liberty. It just wasn't gonna come close. And even with just doing the Tuesday show, there's still more candidates that aren't getting a chance. So we might expand eventually here to Tuesday and Thursday to accommodate some more candidates. But back to Tim Silfies. This is a guy that, people in Pennsylvania, libertarians in Pennsylvania, are very excited for Tim Silfies' campaign. Across Pennsylvania, we have incredible, the best that I've ever seen, libertarians on the ballot in this state. It is going to be so exciting in November to be able to see how things shake out, having Dale Kearns running for U.S. Senate, doing just a fantastic job. Latest poll came out, Dale Kearns polling at 11%. So very, very cool stuff going on. Tim Silfies in a very competitive race here, has a chance to win, has the name recognition. People know him from being on local TV there. That is huge. That's so great for libertarian. You pair that with having the ideas, being on the the right side, the principles side. He has a real shot, and he's in all the debates. He has a real shot. I'm excited to see where it goes. Just want to say a couple of things, guys. If you're new to this show, if Tim Silfies brought you to Lions of Liberty for the first time, this is only one of our shows, as I said at the top. I encourage you, I challenge you to go back in our feed, to pick a couple of some recent shows, because they're different formats. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday show, they're all different formats. So pick a couple of interviews that Mark has done, or maybe roundtables on that Monday show. Pick a couple Electric Liberty Lands with Brian McWilliams and listen to those. And pick a couple Felony Fridays recently and listen to a couple of those. I guarantee you're going to like all three of them. One of the formats you will fall in love with, but you're going to like, you're going to enjoy, you're going to listen to all three formats. I challenge you, go back and do it if this is your first time listening to this show. I won't keep any longer. Thank you guys for listening. We thank our Lions of Liberty Pride supporters. If you want to join the Lions of Liberty Pride and get access to our bonus content, merchandise, all that stuff, you can do that by going to patreon.com/Lions of Liberty. And that's all I got for today. This is John Odermatt signing off. Always remember to keep your head up and the fires of liberty burning.